Brooklyn Independent Television.
Welcome to Neighborhood Beat, your passport to Brooklyn. I'm your host, Melanie Farah, and in this astonishing episode, we return to the scenic and stylish neighborhood of Red Hook. We get a lesson in ukulele making at Great Plains Handmade Instruments. Then we meet Red Hook icon Ralph Balzano at his Nautical House Museum. Next, we shop for darling finds at Foxy Winston, and then we finally get tasty Thai at Pok Pok NY. You stay tuned. Red Hook is a definite destination spot and is full of fun offerings and so worth the trek. You can check out a show on the only barge of its kind at the Waterfront Museum, grab some sexy handmade lingerie at Winkworth, make your very own bike at the Bamboo Bike Studio, and go visit Red Hook Winery, where we have occasional tours and tasting. Yes, Red Hook is as cool as it sounds. Barry Rust is a grade school teacher by day and a DIY instrument maker by night. His instrument of choice, ukuleles. His material of choice, cigar boxes. Sounds intriguing. Let's pay him a visit at Great Plains Handmade Instruments.
I started making these instruments about 6 years ago, basically just because I wanted a new ukulele. I'd been collecting all sorts of different instruments from all sorts of different places and had gotten a really cheap ukulele at the local music store and thought, well, I'd like to get a nicer one. But I found a cigar box at a garage sale, and somehow that triggered a memory that there were such a thing as cigar box instruments, and so I thought I'd try it out. My dad has a big wood shop, and they happened to have an old cigar box, and they let me use that, and so I cut the neck out of some wood that they had lying around and put it all together, and it actually sounded pretty good. Once that kind of magic of strumming an instrument that you've made and having it sound like it's supposed to sound, I was pretty hooked on it. After that, every time I would go home, I'd make more and more. Like, as a collector of instruments, I then saw it as a way to add more different kinds of instruments to my collection. I was also playing the banjo a lot at the time, and so I made a fretless banjo, I made a tenor banjo, I made a cigar box fiddle, all sorts of different things, because it had, like, a whole world had just kind of opened up to me. One of the things that I really like about making these instruments is that once you understand a few principles, you can apply that to a lot of different things. Once you know the length of a string and where the frets go, it's really just proportions. You can make an instrument out of a cigar box, or you could make an instrument out of a coffee tin. The more involved you get, the better the instrument ends up sounding. And so, my first attempts, they sounded like what they were supposed to sound like, but they didn't sound really good. And so over time, one of the fun things that I've gotten to do is kind of change the way that I've built the instruments to take into account what I've learned about the way that instruments produce sound. So what I'm doing right now is carving the neck for the ukulele. I've already attached the fingerboard and cut a dovetail that'll fit in the cigar box. I'll carve it using a microplane rasp. Once the fretboard's finished, I'll just put some glue on and clamp it onto the neck. Usually I'll leave the clamps on for at least 90 minutes. Once the glue is dried on, I'll leave that for about 24 hours, and then I'll end up cutting the taper on the neck. Now it's all clamped up, I'll set it to the side and let it dry, and probably end up cutting the rest of it tomorrow. Right, what I'm working on right now is just putting the dots in for the markers that will go onto the fretboard, that'll go onto the neck. And these dots that I use are just pre-cut from mother of pearl. I use a file to get them level with the rest of the fretboard. Once the fretboard's finished, I'll just put some glue on and clamp it onto the neck. And so here are a bunch of instruments that I've made. This coffee tin I actually found at the Brooklyn Flea. A lot of the wood that I use, like for example, this maple comes from what used to be my granddad's wood shop. Something I like to do is try to build new things and try different things out. And here's an example of using a big wine box for this kind of funny instrument. It's modeled on a hurdy-gurdy, and there's a wheel connected to a crank. It's a work in progress, but it's kind of fun to play around with. This last one's an example of a box that I found on eBay. Just made a nice little ukulele. Red Hook is one of those neighborhoods that so many of my friends say is their favorite. It's just such a unique place, being on the river, cobblestone streets, the mix of industrial and residential. It's just this kind of wonderful place to be in general. It's just a really nice community, even just on this floor. Creative people, really great people who are willing to share ideas and give great feedback too. It's just kind of this fun adventure for me. And one of the things I think is important about learning is that you don't put too much stress on yourself. So that's kind of what I'm trying to do. Not stress myself out over it, not make this a full-time thing right now, but just enjoy it. And that's been the most successful for me so far.
Red Hook has become quite a destination for food as well, with a list of restaurants as diverse as the population. Some of our favorites include the Good Fork, where you can get awesome dumplings and now an amazing brunch. Hope and Anchor, where you might get a little drag performance with your burger and fries. DeFonte's, where hearty subs are big enough for the dock workers of old. And finally, Kevin's, a great little seafood spot with a menu that changes with the season. Bon appetit! Red Hook style. Lifelong Red Hook resident Ralph Balzano has been amassing collectibles for a number of years. The result? His nautical house museum full of history, memories, and, well, stuff. Let's check it out.
My uncle owned it originally, and when he passed away, I bought it from the estate. That was back in 1992. First of all, we cleaned it out, because it was to be a mechanic shop. Then we started bringing stuff in. My friend worked for sanitation, and I had stuff in my garage at my other house. And gradually, we started building up. Now I'm looking for places to hang them, because there's no more room in here anymore. But we'll find it.
I worked for sanitation for 20 years in New York City, and I started bringing stuff in, and it was laying on the side, so Robbie started hanging things up as time went on. And this became this, actually. After 20 years, just finding stuff in the garbage. And Ralphie found ways to put them someplace, and that's what happened. It became like a museum, like within the last 20 years.
Well, originally it was started in the back of my house, a little shed. And people had given me stuff. And it was a shame just to throw it in the corner. And I needed space. My wish was I wish I had a big place, put the stuff I have so I can show it rather than put it in the corner and you don't see it.
I would bring it in, he would hang it up. And I didn't have nothing to do with that. Or I was brought it in and gave it to him and he hung everything up.
This came up at the right time and they bought it. I said, wow, this is a treat. You know what I'm saying? Now I don't have to hide my stuff anymore. I can put it each place where I want to put it. This is my thing. This is what I like to do, and I enjoy doing it. You know what I mean?
The truth is, I found so much stuff. I mean, the last thing I found down here, and I was working on a job, is the surfboard back there. I happened to see it on the corner, and I grabbed it. There's so much stuff, I couldn't even start it. I couldn't remember all the stuff I found. I should have documented it, but I didn't.
I would like to take on a tour of my clubhouse. This is a 1960 BRIC convertible. Originally my uncle, he bought it new. I bought it from the estate and I did some work on it. I had a new interior put in it. It runs good. I'll show you my El Camino. This is my toy, not a toy. This is a 1960 Chevy El Camino. It happened to be a gift and I did some work on it. I did quite a work on it. That's also new interior. As we go along, this is another car. It's a 1957 Lincoln Premier.
Found this in the garbage. Now he has blue eyes. He's got blue eyes. It's Peanuts, that's his nickname.
Peanuts! Peanuts! Get your peanuts in!
That's gonna be the funniest thing I ever found. You know, it's amazing. Yeah? It's right there, it's right there. And I picked it up and I saved it, brought it in, and Ralphie put it on a swing with a beer in his hand. And I found this Marlin on the street. Ralphie took it in and he painted it, and he put a nose on it.
And then over here I got a horse carriage, which I love this. This came from Central Park. The guy bought a new carriage, and he had it in the garage. So he put it on a flatbed and brought it down here. See, when people give me stuff, I feel it's rude to sell it. People come in there, you want to sell, nothing for sale. Nothing for sale. You want to look, be my guest, but nothing for sale. Considering what we had years ago, there used to be nothing down here. When it snowed down here, it snowed, and that snow wasn't taken away for weeks. In fact, when it froze up, we didn't have no place to go. We put ice skates on and ice skate down the street when it froze. But we had fun with it.
When we hang out here, we have a few beers, smoke our cigars. Talk about the old times in Red Hook. We grew up down here, swimming down the piers. The old sugar plant that was down here, the old soda company, Todd Shipyard, which is now IKEA. The place across the street just became a market now. It used to be abandoned. This used to be a dirt road. As a kid growing up down here, I was growing up in the 70s down here, with ships all over the place, and it was nice.
When we were kids, we had nothing. We had nothing. Money was tight. There was like 7 of us, 5 brothers, including me, 5 and 2 sisters. My father used to be a cook. My uncle and my father owned the bar and restaurant. It used to be like shipyard workers. There had to be a gate down the street. When they were working, it used to, 12 o'clock whistle came, the gate used to open, and there was hundreds of people run down the street to find a place to eat.
It was a forgotten neighborhood for years before I was born, I guess, and I guess after I was born. And finally, people know where we're at, So I love the way Red Hook changed because, there's people around again. It died out for a long time. The shipyards closed, the sugar company closed, and we got the place in '96. We started fixing it up, and all of a sudden, people started coming around again. And it was really, I think it's a great input for the neighborhood.
I was going right around the corner, and then from there, I went a few blocks away, so I'm still in the same area. I went to Florida for 2 weeks, couldn't wait to get back here. Florida is nice, but it's not for me. It's not home. It's not home. The old saying, there's no place like home. And it's the truth. It's the truth.
Foxy Winston is my mum and dad's name. My mum we called Foxy instead of Mum. My dad really is Winston, named after Mr. Churchill. Foxy and Winston is the boutique design house for paper goods and textiles. I'm an illustrator, and a lot of the products in here are hand printed by me, and some of them are made in India with a fair trade textile sourcer that I work with. I studied fashion and textiles at university for 5 years in England. I dabbled in all sorts of things, from painting murals in restaurants to doing illustration for editorial and all sorts of different jobs. After about 10 years of waiting tables, I finally decided to start my own business. I began out of my studio in my apartment, and I started working, building a line of stationery. A year and a half later, I took a studio up the road. So I started my business officially in 2005. And then 3 years ago, I found this little shop, and it had a studio in the back where I could do my work and I could sell it in the front. So I decided to take a risk, and it paid off.
I think people really respond to Jane's work because of her colors. She uses a lot of really beautiful and bright colors, and I think she's gotten really well known for her teals and her chartreuses. Whimsy is a very good word for it. She has a love of all creatures, great and small. She really has an eye for drawing animals. I think in the city that's a really nice juxtaposition, and so we get a lot of people really liking her work and gifting her work because of her color palette and her choice of typography. She's very charming as well as an illustrator.
A lot of what sets it apart is that I still draw everything myself, so they're always a little bit different. The brightness of the ink, the opacity of silkscreen ink, it's quite different to lots of other printing mediums, so it's just very bright and very opaque, and I'm able to use proper artist's acrylic colours, so you get that rich pigment. Now we're going to make some sunny yellow daisy teacup cards. I'm going to flood the screen with the yellow acrylic paint.
Working at Foxy Winston here in Red Hook is great. It's a great part of the city to come to every day. The community is wonderful. Everyone seems to really know each other well and support each other. I think there's a definite mythology about working near the water. The idea of old sailors and some kind of, schooner going by and the tugboats that come by, it definitely feeds into the whimsy that goes on in the shops around here as well.
Shops open up down here and they fail and close down again. I think you've got to be something very specific to survive down here. If I was just a shop, I'd have closed down probably 2 years ago, because you can't just make a living down here buying stuff, marking it up and selling it. You need to have fingers in many pies. So it's not that busy, When I first opened the shop, I only sold my own things, and I found that it was awfully hard to keep a rotation of interesting things for people to look at. They'd come in the next week and there was nothing new. And I quickly learned that I needed to buy other stuff to sort of flesh it out. And then I started to go to the New York gift show and got a little bit braver and started buying things and curating it a little bit more like a normal shop.
In the shop, we also carry a lot of other local artisan and craftsmen's work. If it's not local, it's definitely handmade. I think that's very appealing to customers as well. We try to source things that fit her own design and illustrative palette as well, so that everything is very well curated in here. There's a certain fluidity with the colors and with the design styles. And I think when people come in here, it's very comfortable and cozy, and they feel welcome shopping.
Hi, I'm going to give you a tour of Foxy and Winston now. Here are some of the cards that I make in the back. I print them by hand in very small runs of about 100 each, and they're all blank inside, and I mix the inks by hand. I have all my custom work hanging. I make for children, onesies. I also work on fabric yardage in India. And this is organic cotton canvas. These organic cotton voile lady scarves are made in India, and they're all tasseled by hand. Now I'm going to show you some jewelry. These jewellery pieces are made by a friend of mine, Marcy McGoldrick. They're 14-karat gold decal, silk screened onto porcelain. I'm going to show you some of the things now. This is Gerald. The company's called Sweater Toys. She makes all of these guys from recycled sweaters. No two are ever alike. And this is one of my other favorite designers that I sell. They're machine embroidered and they have little pockets with little guys that tell a story. Other than that, I sell candles, jewelry boxes, all sorts of gift items for all occasions. Come and visit us at Foxy and Winston. We're at 392 Van Brunt Street in Red Hook, Brooklyn, and our website is foxyandwinston.com.
James Beard award-winning chef Andy Ricker considers himself to be a culinary archaeologist, striving to preserve the traditional dishes of Thailand. His latest offering, the much buzzed about Pok Pok NY, serves up dishes that are ruthlessly bold and absolutely authentic. You hungry yet?
Pok Pok is actually an onomatopoeia. It's the noise of the pestle hitting the mortar when you're making papaya salad, for instance, like pok pok pok. That's what the Thai people think that sounds like. I come from Portland, Oregon. I own 3 restaurants there, one of which is a Pok Pok. And we came to Brooklyn to open a restaurant similar to the one that we have in Portland. This is our East Coast version of the Portland Pok Pok restaurant. I'm originally from the East Coast, but I've lived in Portland for about 20 years now. So being here kind of feels a little bit like coming back to my roots. Pok Pok is based on years and years of travel that I did in Southeast Asia and Thailand, starting in the mid-'80s and going up until the present. And the food that we do here is, I call it specific regional Thai food. It's food that I go and I research, learn to cook in the country, and then bring it back and do as very little as possible as far as putting my own personal stamp on the food. I try to keep it as close to what I've had in the country of origin as possible. We don't really cater or change the recipes to the taste of Western audience, but what we do is choose dishes that we think that the Western audience would like. My favorite dishes tend to be the ones that come from the north of Thailand. There's a dish called lap muang, which is a minced pork salad with offal, and it's served with a plate of bitter, sour greens and raw vegetables. Another one would be kasoi, which is the most recognizable dish of Chiang Mai City, and it's a curry noodle soup with chicken. And we're probably best known for is our Vietnamese fish sauce wings, which are obviously not Thai. Natural, fresh chicken wings that we deep fry. They're marinated in fish sauce and garlic and sugar, and then we deep fry them, and they get tossed in a caramel of the same stuff basically, fish sauce, sugar, garlic, water, and then a little bit of chili paste too to give it some oomph. So it'll be a little bit while we get that going. While we're waiting for the wings to fry, I'm going to make up the plate that they go on, which is just has a little bit of a Vietnamese table salad on. So some lettuce, some pickled daikon and carrot mixture, which is called cu cai in Vietnamese, some nice fresh cucumbers, and a little bit of herb here called rau ram, or Vietnamese mint. While the wings are frying, we're going to make the caramel sauce, a mixture of fish sauce, water, and sugar. We're also going to add a little bit of this roasted chili paste to it that we make here in-house that adds a nice toasty, roasty flavor to it all. Okay, when this starts to reduce, we're going to take the wings out of the deep fryer. They're nice and brown and crispy. And we're going to put it right into the caramel sauce. When it gets to around there, we're going to add some of this fried garlic, which in turn will coat the chicken wings and add a nice garlicky crunch to the outside. And we want to leave it in the pan nice and hot so that it caramelizes the outside of the wings and makes the crust even more crispy. And we just take just a touch of water to deglaze the pan with, and we're done. And then these will go onto the plate to serve. The end result are Ike's Vietnamese fish sauce wings. So these are the Pok Pok Som drinking vinegars that we make in Portland. They come in 6 different flavors: honey, apple, pineapple, pomegranate also, raspberry, and tamarind. We've been making these in Portland for about the last 5 years or so, and they're really delicious as an aperitif or a digestif. We also use them in our cocktails quite a bit. They've got a nice sweet, tart, fruity flavor to them. They're definitely not Thai. They're something that I discovered in Asian markets a long time ago, and after having problems with supply, we decided to make our own. We sell these retail, but by far the biggest market for it is our own restaurants. What initially brought me to this area was about a year ago. I was spending a lot of time looking around Brooklyn for a place to do a restaurant. I didn't want to do one in Manhattan, or at least not a full-service restaurant. The expense and the logistics are just too hefty. And it seemed like what we did would fit better in Brooklyn anyway. When customers come to eat here, what I hope for is that they're able to kind of feel like they're somewhere else besides in Brooklyn. And this is the goal at all the restaurants, just kind of make you feel like you've entered into a kind of a side reality here, where we're not in Thailand or Vietnam, but the food evokes a certain feeling, the smells, the music that we play, the atmosphere, the decor and everything just kind of puts you somewhere that you're not used to being. Food kind of pushes you all the way there, hopefully, where you're tasting something maybe you haven't had before. For the most part, the other local businesses have been really supportive and happy that we're down here, and we're happy to be joining the community. We do get some visitors from Manhattan a bit, and we get people that are coming in by bicycle or car or whatever from other parts of Brooklyn as well. But I think that the core of our business is still the neighborhood, which is what we aimed to do originally.
I hope you enjoyed our jaunt to Red Hook. I know I did. What a great neighborhood. For more information about the Neighborhood Beat series, visit us on the web at bricartsmedia.org/BIT. You can also follow us on Twitter and like us on Facebook, keyword BK Independent TV. I'll see you next time in Brooklyn.
Watch this and other Brooklyn Independent Television episodes online at bricartsmedia.org/BIT.